The new genre book for the Cypher system that I've really been waiting for, Rust and Redemption, is in my sweaty fat hands, and I'm so excited. Let's go over the book and see if it's everything. Their new white book for the post-apocalypse is everything that I wanted it to be. A little disclaimer here, I'm sort of writing this as I'm looking through the book and reacting to it, much like I did for The Weird, and if you've seen that video, you know that even if I love a book that MCG puts out, I'll still be strict on them in places if I think they could have done better. So we'll see if that's the case here. First up for me is usually the book layout, probably because I do a lot of book layouts for TTRPGs myself. I will say this, there have been a couple of books by MCG, like The Weird and We're All Mad Here, that have had some very unique and beautiful layouts that I also thought were a little on the hard to read side. Rust and Redemption does not have any issues here. Aside from a couple of fonts used in the side content where the text is meant to look worn away and missing bits, all the text in the book is clear and easy to read at a large enough font size that I could find more than comfortable enough that the digital copy is great on both computer screens or tablets or what have you. It follows the normal Cypher 3-column layout, although I kind of refer to it as a 2.5-column layout since the outer column is usually smaller text and meant primarily for side notes. So anyone familiar with how MCG does their trade dress will be very familiar with the layout of Rust and Redemption. As is always the case in every book I have basically ever seen from Monica Games, the art is amazing. It's a mixture of their usual absolutely stunning art by extremely talented artists. Honestly, if you like anything here, make sure to stop by the credits section and note down some of the names of those artists. But what I find interesting in this book is for some of the backplates and background art, they've taken real photos, texture graphics, and hand-painted bits and run them through a bunch of grungy filters. And I'm not opposed to that. It adds that broken, dirty realism to the post-apocalyptic theme that still goes well with the great hand-painted standalone art. I think the design choice was a good one. Okay, now we're going to start getting through the content areas, so these are going to be big ones. I'll try to chop them up as I can. First, we'll start with chapters 1 to 3. Just like other genre books that the community often calls the white books, Rust and Redemption starts with a brief overview of what the genre of the book is and gives you some example media you should watch, read, play, or listen to. This is pretty standard for a lot of RPGs and has been for decades. It's a great way to get people to connect with what the mindset they should be in is. I'm doing that in my own books as well. Then they delve into tips and advice about themes within the post-apocalyptic setting and how to deal with them and bring them into the game. A little side note here, I love this genre and already have a video with in-depth advice on post-apocalyptic themes in tabletop RPGs. Link is in the description below. Maybe check that video out after you've watched this one to get maximum use out of your new book. Rust and Redemption then gets into a level of realism to the genre. This was something I wasn't sure how much MCG was going to delve into. They tend to present Cypher as more of an abstract cinematic experience with grand gestures, high adventures, and things that don't worry about the nitty-gritty details. But a post-apoc game is about survival, grit, and details. That's why I was surprised to see not only some solid advice in chapter 3 about these things, but even tables of like shelf life and stability times for like foods, fuel, vehicles, buildings, and tons more. You don't have to use them, but for me, that's the exact type of thing I'll be looking for in a book like this, and I was pleasantly surprised to see it. Before we continue with my review of Rust and Redemption, I wanted to let you know that you should go follow me on my Ko-fi link from the video description. Instead of doing a Kickstarter for my upcoming Voidhome book, I'm going to be offering an early access package for Voidhome through my Ko-fi shop. The early access package will get you access to all of the early digital stuff before they're released as we're testing it and refining it. You will then get the final book upon its completion and added perks of the full-length adventure PDF and whatever I'm naming the Bestiary PDF. I have no idea yet. You'll be getting all of this for $15.99 USD. If possible, I also wanted to see if I can grant those that purchase it on Ko-fi coupon links on DriveThruRPG to get that final release copy as part of your library there as well. However, that's more of a hope and less of a promise. You will only be able to buy into the the early access package until the main book is finished, after which all those things will be sold separately and at possibly slightly higher prices. So if you're looking for a dark and gritty sci-fi survival horror game that's compatible with the Cypher system, but has tons of new core rules, optional rules, all new types, descriptors, foci, and very in-depth setting, to be honest, I've probably poured way more of myself into this than I should have, then subscribe to me here and maybe follow me on Ko-fi so you can make sure you can get my stuff for a song and a dance instead of, actual proper amounts of money, because apparently I'd rather give away my stuff than actually pay rent with them. So whatever, back to the review. Chapter 4 goes into setting up the apocalypse itself by having you answer when, where, and how. I like that it reinforces that in Cypher, you could use this book with basically any other genre. You could have a post-apoc world that's your standard modern zombie survival, but you could also have something strange in medieval times, ancient Roman times, far, far future, fantasy world, maybe superhero. You don't have to limit yourself to Mad Max or The Walking Dead. This didn't exactly surprise me, but that's only because I already figured the book would have pretty solid advice in it. It even ends off with a fairly large table using that multi-column format we've been seeing more of, so that you can roll in more realistic or less realistic apocalypse randomly. Chapter 5 is a biggie. It delves into the types of scenarios, environments, and antagonists and plots you'll see in a post-apoc game. I'd like to mention that there's even more tables, including one for plot seeds. I love the amount of tables in this book. I won't go into too many details of the chapter. If you want to know more, you're just going to have to read the book, but Chapter 5 is a good read. Chapter 6 is optional rules. As gamer nerds, we all love this stuff. It starts with exposure, starvation, dehydration rules, something you wouldn't see in most of the high fantastical style Cypher games, but it 100% belongs in this genre, or anything with a survival element really. Then it gets into radiation, because if your setting is modern or futuristic, that's probably going to be a thing. Then we have scavenging, repairing, and rebuilding. Although very different from the way I've been handling it in Void Home, it makes very much sense for the way it's presented in this genre. They keep things very simple and streamlined, but most importantly, there's a bunch more tables. Useful random stuff, junk tables, found food, all sorts of goodies. Then they introduce something that surprised me, something I haven't even dared to touch upon myself: equipment maintenance. They keep it fairly simple so it's not tedious, but honestly, decay of your equipment is 100% in line with the survival aspects of the post-apoc genre, and it's not like you have to use it. So I think this was an unexpected and pretty neat new optional rule to add. There are some optional rules like Iron Man and Fragility that are reintroduced from previous titles, but they very much match the genre, and it takes up like one column out of one page to reprint them, so I think it was the right choice. The rest of the chapter is all about mutations, and I mean like a lot about mutations, rules and tables, and all sorts of cool stuff. Chapter 7 really feels like it's meant mostly for the game master. It's all about threats and hazards in a post-apoc world, as well as GM intrusions. This chapter is a little bit of advice coupled with, well, mostly those wonderful juicy tables. I love tables. Chapter 8 is a mini bestiary. It's got a couple of reprints for the microstat blocks for things like animals, but then it has a bunch more of those filled in stat blocks for some entirely new things. Also, and I can't tell you why, but in the box about blighted creatures, there's this bear. I love this bear. I love him so much, and I want to give him hugs to make him feel better. Is that strange? Chapter 9 is character options. The white books don't normally introduce much in the way of character options here, so I figured this was just going to be lists of existing descriptions, types, and foci that you'd want to use. I was wrong. First, there are a bunch of very unique descriptors in here, from the canine, a humanoid dog person mutant thing, to an outright mutant, or the rusted, which is kind of like Furiosa from Mad Max, where you're a hardened person with prosthetics. So that makes that chapter worth it. And then we can move on. Wait, there's foci as well? Well, at least 2 of them here I think are reprints, but there are several new ones here I'm quite excited to add to my master collection as well. So chapter 9, wow, had more than I thought. Chapter 10 delves in a little deeper into currency and equipment, including handling things like barter. The post-APOC genre generally has stronger ties to equipment than a regular Cypher campaign does, so it makes sense to delve back into it, which this chapter does. Chapter 11 is straightforward with new ciphers and new artifacts. Although one really cool thing here that I had not thought of doing, there are several artifacts that are just pre-apocalyptic normal items. But because you live in a resource-scarce post-APOC world, suddenly things like books or water filters are kind of a big deal. Because they reminded me that artifacts are meant to be something special and above and beyond. But what you consider special and above and beyond is really relative to your current situation. So despite all the cool, strange ciphers and artifacts, for some reason the mundane book, Faraday cage, salvaged car, and water filter kind of really tickled me. The campaign setting. It's after this we get into the new micro campaign setting, something I believe all of the white books have touched upon and done in one way or another with their own little unique one. In this one we have a very unique in-depth setting for such a short area, and one that I'd actually be kind of interested in playing in. I haven't really used any of the micro campaign settings personally, but I kind of like this one. It's pretty good.
But wait, there's more. Hang on to your seat, baby!
After that, then we get in some really cool adventures and a couple of shorts, which if you're not familiar are like single instance mini adventures, often good for a side gig or a one-shot. I don't want to ruin anything here. In fact, I didn't want to ruin it for me either, and I haven't really read through them yet. I know I'm doing this as like a review of the book, but I don't tend to run pre-written adventures. But I kind of would like to see myself one day being a player in one of these adventures, so I don't want to spoil that for myself. I did leaf through, and there are some art in there that really tantalized me and made me want to read it, but I'm going to abstain from reading them for now. In conclusion, I've never been able to say that one of the white books was my favorite over the others. The advice from the Stars of Fire is amazing. The mechanics and ideas in Claim the Sky is wonderful. The storytelling and guides in We're All Mad Here blows my mind. Stay Alive always inspires me. I love all of the white books. But Rust and Redemption is packed full of goodness. And not just really good ideas and tips and stuff, but so many tables and rules and tons of things that will make you want to pull this book back off your shelf time and time again to refer to it. When you have high expectations for something, you usually get disappointed because those expectations become unrealistic. I had high expectations for Rust and Redemption, and honestly, it still probably exceeded those expectations. There were one or two things I think could have gone into this book that weren't there, things that help reinforce the desperation and grit of a post-APOC setting, but this book still manages to hit all my major checkmarks and surprise me with a ton of things that went above and beyond. As much as I love the Cypher system, Monica Games knows that I'll be blunt about if I like or do not like something. I was ready to be super critical of Rust and Redemption because of how I love this genre. I was actually worried I might be overly critical, as a matter of fact, but I love it. I think it's an amazing book, and as soon as my physical copy is shipped to me, I will proudly put it on my shelf. If you are even remotely interested in playing in a game where the world has already ended, this is a must-have book. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And as always, stay healthy, stay safe, and have a good one. Eh?
Goodbye, soldier.